"These seats are for close family," Brandon said as he shoved me aside, smirking like he had just done something clever. I snapped. "Then let your real family pay the damn $4,700 bill," I muttered under my breath as I stormed out. I didn't look back. I'd had enough. I was done with them, done with the lies, the manipulation, and the way they'd always treated me like I didn't matter. Growing up, I'd always felt like the outsider in my own family. I was the quiet one, the strange kid who didn't fit in. While my cousins boasted about their wild weekend sand fancy outfits, I was the one who stayed home, buried in books, working hard, figuring out how to escape. I didn't care about impressing anyone, especially not these self-centered relatives. They never saw anything valuable in me. But life took an unexpected turn, and I ended up succeeding. I carved my own path, worked tirelessly, and made more money than any of them had ever dreamed of. Not that they would admit it. No, they acted like it didn't matter, until they needed something. And that's where we were tonight. I hadn't planned on seeing them again. I'd stayed away from these family gatherings for years. They were always fake, filled with forced laughter, cold stares, and reminders that no matter what I did, I would always be the nobody in the family. But my mother, bless her heart, had begged me. "Just come to own dinner, Robert. It's been years." Against my better judgment, I agreed. As soon as I stepped into the overpriced steakhouse, regret hit me. The family was already seated at the long, fancy table, laughing too loudly, like it was some scene from a TV show. Brandon, my childhood bully, sat at the center, grinning like he ruled the room. When his eyes found me, his grin stretched even wider. "Look who showed up," Brandon said, leaning back in his seat, his voice booming, drawing attention. "Didn't think you'd still remember us, big man." I forced a small smile, trying to slip into a seat at the far end of the table, but Brandon raised an eyebrow, stopping me. "Nah, Robert. Someone's already sitting there." I glanced around. The only seats left were next to Brandon or his equally smug sister, Melissa. I moved toward another chair, but Melissa rolled her eyes. "That one's taken too." I blinked. "You've got to be joking." Brandon chuckled, leaning forward. "Robert, this table's for close family. Find a seat somewhere else." A few people chuckled. Not everyone, but enough to make my teeth clench. My mother looked nervous, but, as usual, stayed silent. My aunt gave me a smug smile, while my uncle shook his head as if I were some strange problem. And Brandon? He looked pleased. I could have left. I probably should have. But instead, I gave a small grin. "Somewhere else, huh?" I replied. "Sure, I'll stick around." I grabbed a chair from a nearby table and pulled it up just outside their main seating arrangement, technically still part of the group, but barely. A waiter came over, looking unsure. I waved him away and ordered just a coffee. Brandon and Melissa exchanged a quick glance but didn't say anything. Then it became clear why they wanted me here in the first place. I wasn't stupid. They weren't here to reconnect. They were here to show off. "I'll take a Heath Wagyu," Brandon said loudly, closing the menu with dramatic flair. "And the lobster. Oh, and drinks for everyone," he added, shooting me a cocky smile. "It's a big night after all." "Yeah, let's spoil ourselves," Melissa chimed in. "Order the best desserts, too." I stayed silent, sipping my coffee slowly, watching with a calm expression as the food and drinks piled up. The total kept growing. When the food was gone, the glasses empty, and everyone leaned back in their seats, looking smug and full, the server came over and dropped the check in front of me. $185.50, he said, placing it right in front of me. Brandon stretched out and said, "You're covering this, right, Robert?" Melissa laughed. "Come on, that's pocket change for you." All eyes turned to me. They were waiting, expecting. It let the silence hang for a moment before slowly picking up the check and glancing at it as though the number really mattered. Then, I let out a small, quiet laugh. Brandon narrowed his eyes. "What's funny?" I leaned back in my seat, took a slow sip of my coffee, and smiled. "Oh," I said, "you really don't know who's going to handle this bill tonight." I gently placed the check back on the table, right in front of Brandon. He blinked, his confusion obvious. I sat back, watching as the realization spread across the table like wildfire. "Wait, you're serious?" Brandon's voice dropped, and a hint of nervousness crept in. His smirk faded just a little. I didn't answer right away. I just took another sip of coffee, savoring the moment as his expression shifted from confusion to a mixture of anger and disbelief. Melissa quickly tried to recover. She gave Brandon a subtle nod and then turned to me. "Isn't your business doing great, Robert?" she asked sweetly. Thoth sarcasm was evident. Surely, one dinner like this won't break the bank. There it was. The assumption that I owed them something just because I had a bit of success. They didn't think about the years of hard work one had put in. They didn't think about the struggles. No, all they saw was a free meal ticket. They were used to me paying for their messes. But this wasn't about the money. This was about how they had treated me all these years, how they'd never valued me as a person, but only as someone they could take from. Brandon tried again, his grin forced. "Come on, Robert, you've got it," he said, glancing at the waiter and then back at me. "Yeah, the total's big. Beauty, you're doing well, right? Just swipe the card and we'll call it a night." My mom, who had been quiet up until now, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Robert, honey," she said softly, "it's only dinner. It's family. You know how they are." Her voice trailed off, as though even she didn't really believe the words she was saying. I could feel her exhaustion. She knew I was being used, but she didn't want to speak up. I placed my coffee cup down gently, then looked around at all the faces staring at me. My uncle, his stomach pushing into the table, leaned forward. "Look, Robert, whatever this is, cut it out. We all know you've been making good money. Don't act like a child. Pay up so we can leave." He wasn't asking, he was demanding. And the others? Some nodded in agreement. Some just sat there, waiting for me to give in. They thought I would. They thought I'd pay to keep things smooth. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Not after everything. I gave a small, quiet smile, nothing too big. Just enough to make them uneasy. "Sure," I said, my voice steady. "I'll cover the bill." A collective sigh of relief spread around the table, and a few even patted me on the back like I had just saved the day. But I wasn't finished. Brandon brightened. "See, that wasn't so bad," he said, saluting me mockingly. "Appreciate it, big shot." I leaned forward, still smiling. "Actually," I said, "I changed my mind. You all can pay for it. Good luck." The table went dead silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Brandon's face dropped. His confidence evaporated. He opened his mouth to argue, but I was already standing up, grabbing my jacket. I wasn't leaving just yet, but I wanted them to feel the weight of that moment. "Just so you know," I said in a low voice, "if you don't want to deal with this kind of huge total again, you might want to be smarter about what you order next time." Brandon's eyes went wide with shock. The smug cousin who had always bossed me around was now the one stuck, unable to do anything. His jaw was tight, and he scanned the others at the table, clearly lost on what to do next. They thought I would stay silent, take the heat, like I always did. But this time, I was in control. I walked away from the table slowly, fully aware of what was about to happen next. I had already set everything in motion. The server stood nearby, unsure who would deal with the payment. I heard Brandon shout, "Hey," his voice sharp. "You can't just—" I cut him off. "I'll be right over there," I said calmly, pointing to the lounge seats off to the side. "Let me know once you've sorted it out." And I kept walking. The tension behind me was palpable. They weren't used to this. They were used to pushing guilt onto me and watching me cave. But not anymore. I wasn't playing that role. Not this time. I sat down in one of the soft chairs in the lounge area, facing the dining room. Brandon and the others were still in the midst of their panic, and I could hear the whispers starting to grow louder. They were scrambling now, trying to figure out how to cover the cost without asking me for help. I didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt. They had been using me for years, and now, finally, they were on their own. I could see them from where I sat. Brandon was pacing, pulling at his collar like he couldn't breathe. Melissa was standing beside him, her arms crossed, probably coming up with a way to make this my fault. My mom was sitting at the table, her face a mixture of fear and guilt. I could tell she was hoping I'd come back in, save them again. But I wasn't doing that. Not this time. Minutes passed, and I continued scrolling through my phone casually, pretending not to care. But every now and then, I'd look up and catch a glimpse of them still trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. The waiter hovered nearby, clearly growing impatient. I could see him glancing at them, waiting for someone to step up and take responsibility. But no one did. It was almost laughable, watching them squirm. They had never once appreciated my hard work, never once considered how much it had cost me to get to where I was. All they saw was the end result, the success. And they thought that was enough to make me their personal ATM. Well, not anymore. Finally, Brandon walked over to me. He looked like he had just run a marathon, his face pale, his shirt half untucked. He was sweating, and his whole demeanor had changed. The cocky, confident cousin was gone. All that was left was a guy who realized he had messed up big time. I stayed seated, taking my time before I even looked up at him. "What's the problem?" I asked, sounding as calm as possible. Brandon exhaled sharply, trying to stay calm. "Robert, this isn't funny," he said, his voice low but filled with urgency. "The bill is way higher than we expected. Can you please just help us out this time? I mean, come on, we're family." I gave a soft laugh. "I'm not joking, Brandon. You all chose this meal. You picked whatever you wanted without even asking if I was okay with it. And now you want me to cover the wine, the food, everything?" Brandon shifted uncomfortably, swallowing hard. "We didn't think it would turn out like this. It's just one dinner. Can't you just, help?" I leaned back, letting his words hang in the air. Same old story. No responsibility, no apology, just demands. "Brandon," I said, my voice colder now. "I'm done. You're not kids anymore. Pay for your own stuff. I'm not your wallet anymore. I don't care if we're related. That doesn't mean I owe you anything." His face hardened, the anger rising. He narrowed his eyes. "You're seriously going to leave this whole bill on USA Fare? Everything we've done for you? After all the support we've given you?" I stared at him coldly, not blinking. "You mean all those times you expected me to pay for everything while you sat back like I owed you? That's not support, Brandon." Behind him, I saw Melissa and my mom standing, watching the situation slip out of their control. Melissa's face was calculating, no doubt trying to come up with some way to twist the narrative. My mom, though she was nervous, I could see it in her eyes. She was hoping, praying, I would change my mind. Melissa spoke up, her voice shaky and high-pitched. "We can't just leave," she said, her eyes wide. "We're not really going to walk out on a $4,700 charge, are we? That's just crazy." I raised an eyebrow. "Nobody's running off, Melissa. All of you are staying and settling the cost. I'm finished pretending everything's fine. It doesn't matter if we're blood-related. You've been using me for way too long, and I'm through with it." Brandon's face turned bright red with frustration. "You've got to be joking. You're seriously just going to leave us here like this? Now we're the ones stuck with everything, Robert. And you," I cut him off, my voice steady but firm. "Am I the one who picked out all that food? No. You all made those decisions yourselves. Now, deal with what came from it." Melissa opened her mouth to say something, but before she could get a word out, my mom jumped in. Her voice was shaky, almost pleading. "Robert, please, this isn't the moment. We're your family. Just help us this once. You have the money." Her words were like a slap in the face. Of course they knew I had money. That's exactly the problem. They saw my success. But they didn't see the years of hard work it took to get here. They didn't care about effort, they only saw what they could get from me. I stood up slowly, adjusting my jacket, trying to remain composed. No, I said firmly. I can't help. Mom, Brandon can. Melissa can. All of you can. But I'm not cleaning up your disaster this time. I looked at the waiter, who had been standing nearby the entire time, clearly listening. I gave him a small nod, my way of saying I was finished. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, never glancing back. As I stepped into the night air, I heard whispers behind me. I didn't stop. Footsteps followed, making me slow my pace, but I still didn't look back. They had brought this on themselves. Now, it was their turn to deal with it. I reached the parking lot, my hands in my coat pockets, and stared at my car in silence. Then I heard fast steps and the clicking of heels behind me. "Robert, wait," Melissa called out, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. My heartbeat was steady. I was calm, completely in control, but I could hear the panic in her voice. She was trying to pull me back into the same mess I was done with. "Robert," she called again, more desperate this time. I spun around, cutting her off. "You think I don't know what's serious, Melissa?" I said, my voice low but firm. "You think I can't tell exactly what you're trying to pull?" She stopped walking, stunned. Neither of us said anything for a few moments. The wind blew through the trees, and tension hung thick in the air. She looked for words, but I didn't let her speak. "Not this time. You've been taking advantage of me for so long," I said quietly, my voice steady. "Every time something happens, it's Robert will handle it. Never once has it been, 'Hey Robert, how are you doing?' It's always about what I can give. I've had enough." I saw her eyes flicker, and for just a moment, guilt showed, but it quickly shifted to anger. "You can't just abandon us like this," she snapped, her voice rising. "We're depending on you. You can't just walk out on your own family when things go wrong." I clenched my jaw but stayed calm. "I'm not leaving my family, Melissa. I'm walking away from people who think I owe them everything. This isn't about love. It's about control. And I'm finally done letting you treat me like I'm your backup plan." She froze, her face flushed. She clearly didn't know what to say next. Before she could speak again, I saw Brandon and my mom rushing out of the restaurant. Brandon looked a mess, his shirt half untucked, his face full of panic. My mom looked scared and guilty at the same time. Her eyes found me immediately. "Robert, please," she said, her voice breaking. "We don't know what to do. We can't pay. You're the only one who can help us." I stood there, unmoved. I felt a strange kind of peace wash over me. They had pushed me for years, always expecting me to give in. Now, finally, they were learning that everything has a price. They were about to feel the consequences of their actions. "You seriously think I'm going to fix this for you again?" I said, my voice steady. "You really believe this is just about money? It's not. This is about dignity. This is about you finally understanding that I worked incredibly hard for everything I have. And no, you don't get to keep taking from me when life doesn't go your way." Brandon stepped toward me, his hands raised slightly, begging, "Robert, don't do this. We're your family. Try to understand. This isn't just about the cost." I cut him off sharply. "Brandon, for you, it's always been about money. The moment you figured I'd cover it, I stopped being your brother and became your personal ATM." Brandon's face twisted. He opened his mouth but closed it again, unable to find the words. He looked like he couldn't believe I was standing up to him, like he didn't know how to process it. I looked at my mom. She was panicked, her eyes flicking between me and the restaurant entrance, probably hoping I'd change my mind and walk back in to save them. But I wasn't doing that. Not this time. "You created this mess," I said, turning my back to them. "Now it's yours to clean up." Before they could react, I opened my car door, slid into the seat, and started the engine. The soft sound of the motor filled the space between us. I glanced in the rearview mirror. They were still standing there, frozen, unsure of what to dungst. I didn't feel bad. Not at all. They had their shot, more than once. As I drove away, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I wasn't the one getting taken advantage of anymore. And as the restaurant got smaller in my mirror, Ick knew I had finally done what I should have done years ago. They had pushed me too far. Now they had to deal with it.